I ain't never seen a bigger fool than the one who paid $50 for a swamp that ain't worth a nickel.
She ain't even got a boat. What's she gonna do? Wade with the gators.
That girl done lost her mind. Swamp ain't good for nothing but mosquitoes and snakes. She belongs in a straitjacket.
Ava paused behind the counter, coffee pot in hand, listening to their laughter.
Well, look who's here. We were just talking about that fool who bought the alligator pond.
Is that right? Because I am the one who bought it.
You bought that 20 acres of mud and gators?
$50. Every penny saved from my tips at this counter. We'll see.
She set the coffee pot down, pulled off her apron, and walked out the door. The three men stared after her, then burst out laughing again. But Ava didn't look back. 3 weeks before the laughter in the diner, Ava had been walking past the parish courthouse when a sheet of yellow paper behind dusty glass made her stop. Sheriff's tax sale. 20-acre Cypress Swamp. Minimum bid $50.
$50. That's 3 months of tips. Could it ever be more than a swamp?
The next morning, she walked into the courthouse, counted out every bill, and walked out with a deed. Outside the courthouse, Frank Bellamy stood in the shadow of the columns, watching her pocket the deed, his jaw tight. The swamp was a tangle of cypress knees and murky water, choked with brambles you couldn't see 5 feet into.
Everyone says it's worthless, but I've never owned anything that was mine.
She had no plan. Only the stubborn notion that unwanted land could become something more. That night, Frank Bellamy studied an old survey of 20 cypress acres, his mouth a thin line. Avo woke before dawn, grabbed a machete, and walked toward the swamp, the deed folded in her back pocket. For 3 weeks, she swung a machete until her palms bled, clearing brambles that had grown for decades.
Everyone says I am a fool, but I've never been afraid of hard work.
At the diner, Frank set a coffee cup on the counter and grinned at Roy.
I am taking bets on how many months before that girl sells me that swamp for a loss.
You'd buy that mess? I say she lasts 6 weeks, tops.
Ava had no time for the diner gossip. She spent her nights hunched over books on crawfish rice rotation.
The key is the water cycle. Flood for rice, drain for crawfish. It's a system.
She dug levees by hand, working in cold water up to her knees, until she could control the flow. One evening, Frank Bellamy drove past and saw the first shallow water flooding her leveled field. He slowed the truck, stared, then drove on without a word.
This could be the stupidest thing I ever did, or the smartest.
One morning in late March, the first pale green shoots of rice broke through the still water.
It's working. The book said the seeds would survive underwater, but I didn't believe it until now.
A week later, she waded into the shallows and pulled up a wire trap. Inside, a handful of tiny crawfish.
Not enough yet, but by summer, these waters will be crawling.
She bought 6 ducks and turned them loose on the flooded paddies. Their waste fed the water, and the water fed the rice. By May, she had her first harvest, a sack of rice and a cooler of crawfish. She sold them at the parish market.
$90. Enough to buy better traps and more ducklings.
Heard that swamp girl sold some crawfish at the market last Saturday.
A handful of crawfish don't make a farm. She's still just playing in the mud.
But later that evening, Frank Bellamy sat in his pickup at the swamp edge, staring at the dark water, saying nothing. By late summer, her 20 acres produced 2 rice crops and a crawfish harvest that filled every trap twice a week.
The system works. More water, more feed, more money. Finally, real equipment.
Heard she shipped 100 pounds of crawfish to a restaurant in Baton Rouge last Thursday.
Restaurant buy anything once. Doesn't mean she can keep it going.
But her rice is selling at a premium. Heard it's cleaner than the dry land stuff.
Premium. Wait till she gets a bad flood. A swamp ain't no real farm.
Ava bought a used flatbed truck and hauled her own rice to the mill.
If I can lock in a contract with a real distributor, I can expand the flooded area.
Frank started driving by every other day, his truck slowing, his eyes never leaving the water. The other farmers began to quiet down, their jokes replaced by a careful, watchful silence. By midsummer, her duck flock had grown to 30, and their eggs brought in an extra $100 a week.
More ducks, more fertilizer. The water is alive.
A county extension agent spent an afternoon walking her levees, taking notes, and told her she'd built the most efficient closed-loop farm he'd seen.
If the university takes notice, maybe a loan officer will, too.
12 miles away, Frank Bellamy's soybean field was turning brown under a week of 100-degree heat.
10 days without rain, and that swamp has all the water it needs.
He stood at the edge of his field and looked toward the line of cypress on the horizon. That evening, he drove past her property, and a flock of ducks burst from the water, wings beating. His own fields lay cracked and silent. He pulled over and stood staring at the dead soil, his fists tight. The following week, the chalkboard inside a French Quarter restaurant read, Ava's crawfish étouffée, market price.
They want my name on the menu. My crawfish. My story.
You boys see the paper. That Swamp Girl's crawfish is on the menu at some fancy place in the quarter.
It says right here, sweetest crawfish the chef ever tasted. She's selling out every night.
Publicity stunt. Restaurants change menus like I change shirts. She'll be gone in a month.
Ava stood behind the counter, wiping a glass, and let them talk.
Let them talk. My name's on a menu in the French Quarter, and it's paying for this farm.
Ava, that article says you supply 3 restaurants now. That's real business.
They like the taste of clean water. Swamp grown isn't the insult they thought it was.
Frank's coffee went cold in his cup. He didn't say another word. The following Tuesday, the parish extension office released its annual yield comparison. Roy unfolded it at the counter.
Will you look at this? Highest per acre revenue in the parish. Ava Landry, 20-acre cypress swamp.
That's got to be a mistake. Swamp ground can't beat good bottomland.
It's an error. Some clerk punched the wrong line.
Ava was behind the counter, topping off coffee for a new customer, and she did not react.
It's certified, Frank. She's getting $6,500 an acre. That's triple what any dryland farm in this parish pulls.
Don't gloat. Let the numbers do the talking. $6,500 an acre, and they're just figuring it out.
The diner fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the ice machine. Frank's jaw tightened. He stood, his chair scraping the floor, and walked out without looking back. Ava watched him go, and she did not smile. She just turned back to the coffee urn, knowing the swamp had spoken for her. By her second fall, Ava had signed contracts with 6 restaurants, and her rice was in high demand from Galveston to Mobile.
2 years ago they called me a fool. Now I am turning down orders.
She painted a sign, Ava's crawfish and rice, and posted it at the road.
A sign of my own. Something they have to look at every morning.
Frank saw the sign on his way into town. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel.
She's not just staying. She's planting a flag in my parish.
The next afternoon, Frank pulled up to her levee, his pickup crunching gravel, and forced a neighborly smile.
Ava, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let me take over this swamp. Lease it to me.
Lease it to him? The man who called it an alligator pond?
She met his eyes and didn't speak, letting the silence stretch until he shifted his weight.
I'll think about it, Frank. But this swamp isn't for lease.
Frank warned her not to take too long, then climbed into his truck and drove off, dust settling behind him.
Experienced hands. He's been trying to get this land since before I bought it. Why?
That evening, she drove to the parish courthouse and pulled every file on the tax sale of her 20 acres. In a dusty records room, she found the original posting notice buried in a bank box. Tax sale posting. 1 day only. Rear hallway bulletin board. Parish courthouse.
1 day in the back hallway. Nobody would ever see it. This was hidden on purpose.
She asked the clerk for the full assessor's file, but was told it had been archived off-site. She made a photocopy of the posting notice, the machine's light scanning across her face. She walked out into the evening with the copy in her pocket, the questions heavier than the paper. The following morning, she drove to an off-site parish archive, a low building behind the sheriff's station, and asked for the sealed tax sale files. Deep in a cardboard box, beneath layers of old deeds, she found the original assessor's order for the posting of her 20 acres. Sale, posting authorization. 1 day only, rear hallway, parish courthouse. Submitted by Assessor Frank Bellamy.
Frank's signature. He filed the order. He wanted this swamp hidden.
The document showed the posting had been scheduled for a single day in the back corridor, a place no one ever walked.
It was never about an alligator pond. It was a rigged sale for someone who didn't show. And I took it for $50.
She made a photocopy, the machine's lights scanning across her face, and the truth settled deep in her chest.
I wasn't just a waitress with a swamp. I was the woman who beat a crooked assessor.
She folded the photocopy and tucked it into her back pocket alongside the deed. Ava walked out of the archive room into the morning light, already planning. The swamp had given her a farm, now it would give her justice. The next morning, Ava walked back into the diner and tied on her apron, as if it were any other day. But the photocopy in her pocket felt like a loaded gun.
Ava, I need an answer on that lease. You've had enough time to think.
The paper in my pocket is burning. I could stop him right now. But not here. Not yet. Let him dig his own hole. I told you, Frank. The swamp isn't for lease. It's doing just fine on its own.
You are making a mistake. A woman alone with a swamp is a target. Flood, vandals, things happen.
The other farmers at the counter fell silent and turned to listen.
Is that a threat, Frank? Because I've been through worse than rumors. I built this farm from nothing.
I am just looking out for your best interests. A lease would protect you from complications.
She ain't backing down. Frank's gonna pop a vein.
Frank stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor, and walked out without a glance. Roy and Claude exchanged a long look. Ava watched him go, and for the first time, she didn't just endure the silence, she owned it. 2 days later, Frank cornered Roy behind the grain elevator and muttered that someone had tested the swamp water and found it fouled with runoff.
Tests don't lie, Roy. I'd worry if I was her.
Something don't add up, Frank. You've been after that swamp since day one.
Before Roy could press him, a county extension truck pulled up to Ava's farm. A young agent handed her a thick white envelope with the state seal. The Louisiana Agricultural Innovation Award Committee is pleased to announce your farm has been selected for the Outstanding Sustainable Farm Award.
The same week Frank spreads rumors, I get a state award. This isn't coincidence. It's validation.
She took the letter to the diner the next morning and set it on the counter, its gold seal facing upward.
Is that what I think it is? The State Agriculture Award?
Claude took the letter, read it aloud, and the diner filled with applause. Farmers who had once laughed now clapped her on the back. Frank sat stiff at the counter, his coffee untouched, his face a mask of rage. The rumors had backfired, and everyone knew it. The applause had barely faded when Frank Bellamy rose from his stool and turned to face the crowded diner. Farmers from 3 parishes had gathered for coffee and news.
All this praise don't change the facts. That swamp's a liability. I am offering a fair lease, take it.
Roy and Claude exchanged a look, but no one else spoke.
He's cornered. Now he's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. Frank, I've told you. The swamp isn't for lease. But since you keep asking, maybe you should remember why I only paid $50 for it.
The diner went dead silent. Frank's face froze.
What's that supposed to mean?
Just that some deals are too good to be true, and some men ask questions they already know the answers to.
The farmers stared at her, then at Frank, who looked like he'd swallowed a stone. She turned back to the coffee pot, her heart pounding, but her voice had been steady. That night, Ava sat at her kitchen table, the photocopy of the tax sale order spread before her.
Exposing Frank could bring lawsuits, threats. But if I stay quiet, he'll never stop.
She stared at the typed words. Sale posting authorization, 1 day only. Rear hallway.
This is his signature. The proof that he hid the sale. I didn't ask for this fight, but I won't let him steal what I built.
She refolded the paper and slid it into the pocket of her work apron.
When the time is right, I'll bring it to the diner. In front of everyone.
She knew revealing it might cost her friends, might cost her peace. But she'd paid $50 for an honest farm.
No more holding back. He started this. I'll finish it.
She hung the apron on the hook by the door. In the morning, the document would go with her.
This is Frank Bellamy. I think you ought to take another look at the loans for a girl named Ava Landry. Her liabilities don't add up.
He implied she was overextended. Too young for the scale she was running. The bank manager said he'd look into it. 20 minutes later, Ava's cell phone rang. The manager told her quietly that Frank Bellamy had called, questioning her financial standing.
He's trying to strangle my credit. Force me to sell.
The manager, a decent man, told her not to worry. Her revenue was solid. But he thought she should know.
Thank you for telling me. I won't forget it. I have the document. Now I have a witness to his harassment.
She pulled the photocopy from her pocket and placed it on the table. The signature seemed sharper tonight.
This is no longer just my farm. It's a story the whole parish needs to hear.
She slid the document back into her apron. Tomorrow morning, she would end this. That evening, Ava dialed a number she hadn't called in years, an old friend who'd left the parish for law school. She explained the posting notice. The one-day back hallway. The signature of Frank Bellamy. The lawyer listened, then said 4 words that landed like a verdict. That is not legal. He told her a tax sale posted so narrowly would never hold up under scrutiny. Her deed was safe.
Safe. My farm is legally mine, and his scheme is paper-thin.
She asked if she should go to the parish attorney. The lawyer said, "The court of public opinion is where a story like this belongs." Ava hung up and walked to the courthouse steps, carrying the copy of the order. For a long moment, she stood looking up at the building where the fraud had been born.
I'll take it to the diner, in front of the farmers who laughed, and the ones who stayed silent.
She tucked the paper into her apron and walked to the diner to prep for the morning rush, knowing this shift would be different. The morning rush filled every stool and booth. The parish ag meeting had drawn farmers from across the county.
Friends, I'll be direct. This young woman's swamp operation is a house of cards. I am offering her a generous lease to save it.
Roy and Claude exchanged uneasy glances, but the room murmured.
Ava, I am giving you one last chance. Take the lease or risk losing everything.
Ava stood behind the counter, hand resting on her apron pocket, the lump of the paper pressing against her palm.
This is the moment. He's handed me the stage. You want to talk about my swamp in front of all these people. Fine. But let's talk about how I got it.
She walked to the center of the diner, the same floorboards where they'd laughed at her 2 years ago. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the photocopy, folded and creased, then looked straight at Frank. The room went still. Frank's mouth parted, suddenly uncertain.
Tax sale posting. 1 day only, rear hallway. Parish courthouse. Submitted by Assessor Frank Bellamy.
Frank's face drained of color so fast he looked sick. His mouth opened, but only a choked breath came out.
Frank, what's she talking about?
He hid the sale so his friend could steal it for $50. I just got there first.
Frank stumbled backward, bumping into the counter. His hand went to his chest.
All that talk about the alligator pond, you rigged this from the start.
You called it worthless, but you knew it was rich ground. That's why you kept after it.
The diner filled with a low, angry murmur. Farmers turned from Frank as if he were suddenly contagious.
That's not, you don't know.
Frank Bellamy stood frozen, his empire of lies cracking open for everyone in the cafe to see.
That paper, it's a forgery. She's trying to ruin me.
You never expected anyone to see the back hallway posting, Frank. But I walked into the courthouse with my tip money and bought that swamp for $50. This swamp is mine, and it's worth 10 times what you ever offered. I built it from mud, and you wanted to steal it.
Frank's mouth worked soundlessly, his face the color of swamp mud. Roy and Claude turned away, their faces hard. The other farmers stepped back as if Frank were carrying something rotten.
The lease offer is rejected, permanently.
Frank grabbed for his hat but knocked it to the floor. He left it there, stumbling toward the door, half the diner staring after him. The room didn't laugh. It erupted in a low, righteous fury, a drumroll of hands on tables.
All that talk about gators. The only reptile in here was you, Frank.
Ava, I was wrong. That swamp of yours is the best farm in the parish.
The clamor faded, and the old farmers who had once laughed closed in around Ava, not to mock, but to listen.
Ava, I owe you more than an apology. I called it an alligator pond, and you turned it into gold.
I appreciate that, Claude. We all learn.
And you ought to know, the parish extension just posted the final numbers. Your swamp is the highest grossing farm per acre in the parish.
For a moment, Ava didn't speak. She looked around at the same faces that had laughed her out the door 2 years before.
$50. That's all it cost.
They laughed when she bought a swamp for $50, until it became the most profitable farm in the parish. The diner filled with a quiet, respectful hum, and Ava Landry was the center of it. She untied her apron, folded it slowly, and set it on the counter. She didn't need to say anything else. The swamp had already told the whole story.
The water rose past her knees, warm and familiar, the muddy bottom soft. She'd learned every contour of this swamp, and it had rewarded her. She lifted a trap. Bright red crawfish clambered over each other. This was her currency, and it flowed every week without fail. They called it an alligator pond, a liability, but she'd turned it into a living bank that never stopped paying. The ducks paddled close, their quiet quacks the only sound. Everything here was alive because of the water, the rice, the crawfish, the birds that followed the seasons. She straightened and looked out over the flooded paddies. 2 rice crops a year, a harvest every season, income that out-earned every dry farm in the parish. Roy and Claude had apologized. Frank was gone, not the gator they pretended. She'd never asked for revenge, only for a chance. She scooped up a handful of water, let it fall. The drops caught the last light and glittered like falling coins. 20 acres, $50. And she'd built something from nothing. No one could take away.
She stood in the golden light, her silhouette a dark shape against the glowing cypress. The swamp stretching peaceful and full. They laughed when she bought a swamp for $50, until it paid for itself 100 times over.